What is the stupidest way you almost died? Went to go visit a friend in Gloucester, Mass in winter back in high school far from my home. I was planning on staying overnight at their house, but their mother, who I now know has mental health problems, wouldn't even let me in the house because the father wasn't home working a night shift. Friend said sorry bro and closed the door. Almost froze to death waiting outside in 10-degree Fahrenheit at night. A cab driver saw me slumped on a bench and woke me up. Let me get warm and drive around in the passenger seat while he picked up drunk people out on the town all night. When he finished his shift, he dropped me off at the train station and handed me $7 for the fare. Dude probably saved my life and I can't even remember his name. Swam under a shipyard pier at night, solid concrete above me, and lost my sense of direction. Got lucky and found my way out. I snorkeled too far out into the ocean, and it wasn't because it was a riptide, I just got distracted by pretty fish. Stuck my head out the car window BC I wanted to see why dogs loved it. My grandpa didn't notice, rolled up the window, and I choked. He freaked out when he heard the cat-like noises, ironic, I was making while my neck was trying to squeeze through the small opening of the window, but kept raising the window in his panic. Eventually he got it and I was left with a red mark on my neck and no closer to understanding dogs. Being sleepy on the road. Don't. Find a spot and sleep a bit. Grown adult and choked on mozzarella cheese. Was only alone for 20 minutes. Can't imagine the obituary. I was at a water park in Texas with one of those super tall, straight down slides. They had multiple signs saying things like do not push off before sliding down. Me being an 18-year-old idiot and wanting to race my friend, I decided to push off. That extra push started my slow motion, airborne flight over the slide. I was then staring 100 feet down at concrete and my other friend who had his jaw open. What felt like minutes later, I smacked back down onto the slide and made my way down to the bottom. Thank God for the engineers that planned for suicidal idiots like myself. I walked into a backroom freezer of a grocery store. The huge door was designed to close automatically. I knew this and went in and did what I was there to do. After 30 seconds, I couldn't catch my breath. I thought maybe I was just working too hard, so I stopped and took several huge breaths. Nothing. I felt like I was drowning out of water. I had to move as quickly as I could back outside of the freezer and feel to my knees gasping when I got out. It was only afterwards I realized for some dumb reason someone kept open dry ice in a cart inside of the freezer. Dry ice removes oxygen out of the air in enclosed spaces. I almost died from lack of oxygen and would have been an icicle when they found me. Don't f with dry ice. While drunk, I sat down outside, to rest for a moment, on a freezing cold winter's night. Fortunately, a passerby noticed me and encouraged me to get inside. I figure I was probably there dozing for several minutes. Came very close, about 2 inches, to backing into a warehouse rack full of 2-ton coils of sheet metal when I didn't realize that my forklift was in reverse. I was in 2nd or 3rd grade. I was getting off the school bus and was walking around to the other side to my driveway. Suddenly the bus driver hits the horn, scared the hell out of me, and I stopped at the edge of the front of a bus and a dump truck good speeding around. I don't know if the dump truck driver didn't see the lights of the bus or whatever, but that driver made a dumb mistake that could have cost me my life. Thinking about it, my older sister was up at our driveway waiting for me, probably would have messed her up for life. After that, the school district changed bus routes to avoid students having to cross the road to get on or off the bus. Choked on a lifesaver. Edit, no, the hole in the center is not for breathing. Lifesavers have holes in them because the inventor, Clarence Crace, wanted to create a unique candy. Back in 1912, 109 years ago. I'm Italian but have been living in the UK for 2 years. Guess who looked at the wrong side of the road while a bus was coming through? Every time I went back to Italy I risked my life for the same reason by getting used to drive to the left and vice versa. Almost got my head squashed by a car due to a small pebble making me fall on the main road. I coughed. dislocated my C1 C2 vertebrae and spent 6 months in a body halo. How close to death that counts, but be careful when you cough. I stuck my head in a random beaker to sniff something in Chemelab. I have been very good about wafting since. I didn't look before I crossed the street. Walked backwards while talking to my friend, got hit by a van. I wasn't wearing my medical alert bracelet to warn the paramedics and hospital that I'm allergic to Demoral, because it looks dumb and gets caught on my backpack. Besides, what are the chances I'd ever be given that? The chances, it turns out, are pretty good if you get hit by a van going full speed hard enough to nearly rip your foot off at the ankle. I survived 7 surgeries to patch me back up. Was comatose for a little bit. Had some blood transfusions. Massive amounts of physiotherapy. Look both ways and wear your medical alerts, folks. Unplugging the washing machine with wet hands. My hand slipped onto the prongs while they were still partially in the outlet, and I think my heart stopped for a second before I yanked the plug free. Definitely do not recommend. I almost drowned in the sea as a kid. A current pushed me away from the shore. Lifeguards saved me and were slapping my face. I thought it was a punishment, but they were resuscitating me. God, I completely f***ing forgot. When I was like 14 or 15, I found out about breath play from some dumb adult comedy show we shouldn't have been watching. I was curious and dumb, so when I went to bed that night I stuck my head inside my pillowcase, with the pillow over my face, and tied it on tightly with a bathrobe cord. Of course my dumb little f***ing idiot self couldn't get it untied again. I freaked out and was just going nuts, pulling on any random bit of cord I could get my fingers into, trying to pull the pillow off, but all I was doing was compressing the knots down tighter. I remember feeling really dizzy and rapidly seesawing between desperately sucking in hot wet breaths of carbon dioxide, and then just going completely still and feeling like I didn't need to breathe anymore, like I could just lie there peacefully. Then suddenly going back to gasping for air again. Somehow I eventually wiggled enough slack out of the cord to be able to get one of the loops up over my chin so I could pull the pillow away from my mouth, and all I could do for a few minutes was just lay there and breathe. I will never forget how cold and wonderful that first breath of proper air was. F***ing dumb little sh**. Cut my inner ankle on a glass cup. For those who don't know, an artery is there and I literally sliced through it. Almost bled out. Thankfully didn't though. Waited too long to go to the hospital. Pre-COVID, I thought I just had a cold. Husband said, go to the doctor. I said no. 3 days later, still not great. Husband said, go to urgent care. I said I will if I don't feel better tomorrow. Next day, I tell husband, I need to go to the ER. A collapsed lung due to pneumonia. 3 days in hospital plus breathing issues for the next year. Moral, listen to your spouse. And yeah, got a whole lot of I told you so-s. Deserved every one of them. Had experience snowboarding and went with some friends up a Black Diamond run. I was scared to fall, so I would squat so I would have less distance to fall. The person reading this laughing so far knows this makes you go faster. So anywho, I took a tumble worse than Scarlet while going full speed and felt lightness, except my hand caught what I thought was a branch. When the snow cleared, my hand was wrapped up in a red safety net and I was hanging about 4 stories off the mountain. That was the most committed pull-up of my life. Great times. When I was a kid, I dipped my toes into a flooded creek to see how it felt. Proceeded to get sucked into said creek and nearly washed away. Thankfully, the creek had some overgrown areas, and I was able to cling to a tree in the middle of the floodwater and scream for help. This happened directly behind my house, so my dog heard me, alerted my dad, and my dad managed to rescue me. What makes this extra stupid was that I was trying to prevent my friend at the time from doing the same thing. He wanted to surf down the creek on a snow sled. I was following him, telling him it was a bad idea, and then like a dumbass, I ended up in the creek instead. He also gave me shit afterwards for ruining his stunt. Kids are f***ing stupid, I guess. Choked on a small potato at the Pizza Hut salad bar. completely lodged in my throat. I raced to the loo and shoved my fingers down my throat, and it popped out. Walked back to my table and finished my salad. Edit, I was with my boyfriend. He did nothing. I grabbed the waitress's arm. All she did was say, "Is she okay?" to my boyfriend. Hence running to the loo to deal with it myself. I was at Lake Bled in Slovenia and thought I could easily swim the distance between the shore and the island in the middle with the church on it. Boy, was I wrong. About halfway I started getting exhausted and had trouble staying afloat. Then my body kicked into survival mode, the adrenaline started pumping, and I Michael Phelps'd the rest of the way to the island. I ended up paying €5 to have a boat take me back to shore after that harrowing experience. I was riding my bike to either the school or the supermarket, I can't remember. I was maybe like 12-13 years old. In my town you can't really ride a bike on the street, so I had to use the sidewalk. On my way I had to ride across a bus stop with a ton of people just blocking the way for me and my bike. So I decided to hop onto the street, and up onto the sidewalk again later. Those people were blocking my view, so I didn't see a bus coming my way. I just barely hopped onto the sidewalk and the bus missed me by a few centimeters. After that, I didn't really understand what happened. A few hours later it hit me that this could have ended rather bad for me. Taking apart a dryer completely to clean it out and get it running smoothly again, dropped a screwdriver onto an exposed wire. Huge arc and zap sound. I had left it plugged in, up until I realized the incredibly smooth-brained move I had pulled. I got one of those connector Legos with the hole in it stuck in my throat and every breath and noise I made was just a slight whistle. I was like 5 so I had no clue what to do and I finger-f***ed my throat to get it out. Going down the wooden stairs at my parents' house wearing socks. Slipped on the last step and banged my head on the wall. Woke up 3 hours later with Doggo by my side desperately licking my ear. Never told my parents. Every night when I plug in my Chevy Bolt in my garage to charge, I wonder if I'm going to wake up in the morning. I was at a Pink Floyd concert at the old Damper Stadium, was going to get a beer. I got crushed against a wall, at the bottom of a stairway, when a rush of people came up the breezeway. I couldn't move, or breathe, probably 100 or more people in a logjam. I'm not a big person, started to panic, looked up and a guy looked over the rail above me. He started yelling to me to reach for his hand. He leaned way over and grabbed my hand and pulled me up like 8 or 9 feet, and over the rail. Took a few minutes to get a breath. He had the security guy get the medic to check me over. Freaky close to a very bad ending. Went to Grand Canyon and tried to be funny and acted like I was gonna slip. It was snowing, and ended up almost really slipping and falling. Some random guy scolded me like a little kid because he got more scared than me. My homie's autistic brother was in the deep end of a wave pool. He can't swim without floaties. So he called for help and I jumped in. As I was trying to swim with one hand and carry him with the other, I heard the siren for the big wave that happens every few minutes. So I tried to quickly swim away but it caught up and pushed us under. I accidentally tried to breathe and that put quite a bit of water in me. Just then I felt someone grab me and pull me out of the water. It was my homie. And he also grabbed his brother. So after I threw up a bunch of water and rested a bit, I realized that I almost died in a wave pool. I waited over a week with stomach pains in college, thinking it was gas or something. Got so bad I couldn't sleep, but still waited all night to go to urgent care when they opened the next morning, instead of going to the ER. They told me it was my appendix and asked if I wanted an ambulance. I didn't want to cause a scene and elected to drive to the ER. Got to the ER and vomited in their trash can. Was in surgery within 20 minutes. Was in the hospital for 2 weeks with an NG tube and catheter. Everyone said I almost died. Crashed my bike into a parked car. I didn't almost die, but I forgot I had a tampon in, which is potentially deadly if you get toxic shock syndrome, for 9 days. I just had a cherry picker that was 871 pounds tip over 4 inches off my trailer edge to the loading dock and absolutely crush me. Was the only person and spent the longest 3 to 5 seconds of my life with almost 900 pounds crushing my back into my knees, thinking this is exactly how people die under vending machines before I mustered up all my strength and rolled out from under it. Didn't end up getting paid for that delivery. Stood on a stack of lawn chairs, back legs of bottom chair gave way. I fell with the chairs and cracked the back of my head open on the pavement below. Blacked out several times on the way to the hospital, have very little memory of the actual event. Doc somehow glued his thumb to my laceration and yanked the shit off, causing the most unimaginable pain ever. The next few months is a complete blur. I have absolutely no recollection of what happened, only that while in school, some d*** threw a Lego brick at me and hit my injury and motherfucking bitch did that hurt. I cried. Stood in something I shouldn't have, promptly fell and almost killed myself. Somehow avoided brain damage too. I think anyway. Got super baked, like super, so stupid baked I could barely move. I don't know what was in that joint, but it was definitely more than weed. I was in the back seat of a car with Roland, in the front seat was another friend, driving. At night, car broke down on a dark, single-lane road, smack dab in the middle of the roadway. We're at a dead stop on a truck route and it's pitch black out. Through the back window we see headlights approaching, quickly. It's a semi and he can't see us because car is dead, no lights and it's really, really dark out. Headlights are much bigger now and the truck has seen us. Driver is blowing his air horn. Looks like we're gonna get hit. The driver of the car quickly exits the car, running. I'm watching the headlights approaching, mesmerized at how bright they are, paralyzed by the beauty. Roland, sitting next to me, must be doing the same because he's also frozen. God was looking out for stoners that night because the truck managed to go around us at a high rate of speed, the air horn blowing, Doppler effect in effect. Our friend who was driving comes back to the car and berates us, "Why the hell didn't you get out?" That broke the spell, but I didn't know how to answer. In my early teens a bunch of us kids would get super stoned and boogie board down the local river. The river was probably a class 3 at its gnarliest and an easy class 2 for the majority of the float. Well anyways, the first time we went down the river a massive maple, a strainer, had uprooted and fallen directly perpendicular into the river. It looked super cool, so my plan was to paddle over to the crown of it and climb atop it when I got close. Well anyways, I missed my mark and headed towards the trunk instead. The water was much too deep to do any jumping and the speed had picked up around the tree. I crashed into the trunk and my body was pinned directly under the trunk. I remember being able to reach my hands out of water and could see the water line, but physically could not unpin my body. Luckily my friend was a ways back and saw everything. He successfully jumped atop the crown, ran down the trunk to where my arms were flailing out of the water and pulled my body up and over. We both crashed into the water on the other side and he paddled us to shore. I almost choked to death on Skittles. I shared this before, but when I was like 11 years old I was home alone one day during the summer, just watching TV while eating Skittles. I liked to put a bunch in my mouth and make like a Skittle ball that I would chew on. Something on the show I was watching made me laugh and I swallowed the ball, which got lodged in my throat. I then experienced a few seconds of sheer terror because I realized that there was nobody here to help me at all and I was probably gonna die. Thankfully, I remembered some cartoon or movie where someone jammed their stomach on a chair and got something unstuck from their throat. So, I lunged at the corner of the recliner as hard as I could with my stomach and it actually worked and popped the small ball out. It was super lucky because I really had no idea what I was doing, but one of the worst feelings I have ever experienced. Definitely never ate Skittles that way again after that, and to this day I'm still a bit paranoid about eating certain things when alone. Almost asphyxiated on Trader Joe's bagel bites today. The melty cheese basically Spider-Man web blasted itself over my windpipe opening. After I partially recovered, I almost tweeted "This can't be how I die," but I still had more bagel bites to eat and didn't want to tempt fate. Smoking a cigarette after I spilled gasoline on my shirt. I was at work. When I was a teenager I developed a horrible, sharp pain in my lower abdomen that seemed to move from one area to another. I had no idea what it was, my parents didn't know. My mom, who is very anti-doctor, anti-medicine, etc., eventually decided it was probably just gas pains and it would eventually go away. Nearly a week later I was still in pain and it was getting much worse. Painkillers did nothing to help. My mom kept saying it was probably nothing. My brother eventually screamed at her to take me to the ER to get it looked at. She took me to my old pediatrician instead, lol, and he too didn't know what was wrong, but guessed at an ovarian cyst. He spent a long time trying to convince my mom to take me to the ER, and finally she agreed and off we went. I go in, get examined and x-rayed and whatnot. Then, all of a sudden I was getting rushed into surgery to get my appendix removed. My appendix had, long before then, developed a stone, and had gotten gangrenous and slowly ruptured. I apparently didn't have the typical symptoms of appendicitis, so no one had guessed it was that. If my mom had waited much longer for my pain to magically vanish instead of getting over herself and just taking me to the hospital, I would have died. Choked on a hamburger in 8th grade beside my old friend who was too busy flirting until someone else saved me. When I was in middle school my teacher said that if you consume large amounts of salt in a short span you will die. I didn't believe him, so I dissolved 3 cups of salt in water and tried consuming it in 10 minutes as an experiment. Luckily, I thought death tasted bad so I stopped. Depression. Pneumonia from the flu at 21. ER said had I waited longer I would have gone into cardiac arrest. I'm asthmatic. I didn't have insurance despite working full-time as a video store manager and was trying to avoid debt USA obviously. Not fun. If you literally can't walk to the bathroom and back from an illness, don't try to be a tough chick/dude/person/other by riding it out. Screw the bills, get help ASAP.